So good morning. So far we have seen about what are all the different types of grippers over on it. So in continuation with that, we are going to see about an adhesive gripper on today. Okay. So the adhesive gripper in the sense, so it is a adhesive gripper. So it is a robot end effector which grasps objects by literally sticking to them. Okay. So when we are defining a adhesive gripper, so it is a robot end effector that grasps objects by literally sticking to them. Okay. The most important significant in the fact of the path of the adhesive cannot readily be disabled in order to release the grasp on an object. Some other means there is the device that locks the gripped object into the place which must be used over on it. Okay. The reliability of this gripping device is diminished with each successive operation cycle. So as the adhesive substance loses its toughness on repeated use. So in order to overcome this limitation, so the adhesive material which can be loaded in the form of a continuous ribbon into a feeding mechanism which attached to the robot breast. And it is also employed to handle fabric and lightweight materials over on it. Okay. And when we are saying about an adhesive gripper, so actually the adhesive substance which loses its stackiness due to its repeated usage over on it. Okay. And when we are saying about it, actually this this adhesive gripper, so which can be able to used for it is a device which enables robots to pick up and hold the objects also. So whereas in the case of an so we'll have some limitations over on it. Before that, so actually, the major aspect of the adhesive gripper is that fact it is very simple because as long as the adhesive keeps its thickness, it will continue to function without its maintenance. So even though we'll have some limitations, so this substances loses its stackiness because of the repeated usage and reliability is diminished in successive operations. So the next thing we have to see about an vacuum gripper. So in the case of an vacuum gripper, it consists of two components. One to be the vacuum gripper cups and other one to be the vacuum system. Okay. So we are in need to know that the vacuum grippers are used. So actually they are used in the robots for grasping the non-ferrous objects. Grasping the non-ferrous objects. So usually it uses the vacuum cup. So this will be act as a gripping device or which is commonly known as an suction cup. Okay. So this type of grippers will provide good handling if the objects are smooth, flat, and clean. Okay, and it has only one surface for gripping the object. So we are in need to know what is the principle behind in the vacuum gripper. So actually, it will work when the difference between the atmospheric pressure and the vacuum, that is the negative pressure. Okay, it is enough to provide the ability to lift, hold, move, and moreover on it. And similarly, this can only occur when one side of a part is large enough and flat enough for a vacuum gripper to create enough difference between the pressures over on it. So, according to vacuum grippers, it will consist of two components: vacuum gripper cups and other one to be the vacuum system. So, vacuum cups it consists of flexible rubber cup and hard rubber cup. Usually, the cups are made up of elastic material and usually it will be in round in shape. So what this cups will create, it creates a negative pressure so that it will create the vacuum under necessary lifting power on it. So the vacuum will be created between the cup and the object. And the number of grippers determines the size and weight of object to be grasped. Usually the vacuum gripper is used for handling of fragile parts and the positioning of parts which is not as critical as with the other grippers. So in some applications, the objects or two things to be handled, so they can also be held by the vacuum gripper. So the lifting capacity of suction pump on the path of dinner, it depends upon the effective area of the cup and negative air pressure between the cup and the objects over on it. Okay. So this is the diagram which shows the which is device which is for flat surface gripping and for the contact surface. So when you are saying for a lift capacity of suction pump for this, it depends upon two things. One to be the effective area of the cup, another one to be the negative air pressure between the cup and the object. So I have shown the expression, it is F is equivalent to K into P into A effective or A effective to P naught. So here, where F is the lift capacity, so we know the unit to force to be Newton, K to be the coefficient, and we'll have an effective area, and we'll have a negative pressure, and PA stands for an atmospheric pressure, and PR is the residential pressure in vacuum cup overall. So these are the dual gripper, single gripper. So we'll have a different, what is the difference between the dual gripper and single gripper? So the advantage of it is to be lighter in weight and it will distribute the pressure entirely in some area. When you are saying about the disadvantage, it is not suitable for components having curved surface and holes. So it requires more time to build the vacuum in the cup overall. Okay. The next thing we have to see about and what are all the types of gripper mechanisms. Okay. So we'll have there are various ways in the for classifying the mechanical grippers and the actuating mechanism. Okay, so one method is to be that according to the type of finger movement used by the gripper. So already we said that we'll have four types of robotic grippers. We'll have vacuum grippers, pneumatic grippers, hydraulic grippers, and servo-electric grippers over on it. Okay, so this is the so actually when you're saying about various types of gripper mechanisms, so actually the grippers can actuate the opening and the closing of the fingers by one of the following motion. So one to be the pivoting movement, next one to be the linear or translation movement. Actually, the pivoting or swinging gripper mechanisms is the most popular mechanical gripper for industrial robots. So it can be used for limited shapes of an object, especially a cylindrical works over on it. Okay. Suppose if the actuators produce the linear movement like pneumatic piston or the device which contains a slide crank mechanism. So when the piston 1 is pushed by the pneumatic pressure to the right, the elements in the crank 2 and 3 will rotate counterclockwise with the fulcrum F and similarly with the clockwise with the fulcrum F respectively. So the when B is less than 1800, so this rotations make the grasping actions of the extender and the crank elements of the 2 and 3 over on it. Okay. So this cam and follower arrangement, which often using a spring load follower, which can provide the opening and closing action of the gripper. So the advantage of this arrangement, what it can say that the spring action should accommodate different size objects over. So there is the translation finger movement, which might also be accomplished by means of a linkage, which would maintain the figures in a parallel orientations to each other during actuators. Mechanical grippers can also classify according to the types of kinematics used to actuate the finger movement. So in this classification, we have the following types. One to be the linkage actuation, gear and rack actuation, cam actuation, screw actuation, rope and pulley actuation, and miscellaneous. The first one to be the linkage actuation. So linkage actuation is the category which covers the wide range of design possibilities to actuate the opening and the closing of the gripper. The design of the linkage will determine how the input force to the gripper is connected to the gripping force over on it. So this is a diagram which shows the possible linkages for robotic grippers. The next one to be the gear and rack configuration. So actually in the case of gear and rack configuration, we'll have a gear, rack, and gate rail also be over there. Okay. And apart from that, so actually the rack and pinion, okay, which is a linear type of actuator which comprises of a circular gear which engages the linear gear which operates to translate. So what is the rack? Rack in gears when the path of Dina? It can be thought of as a segment of a gear, okay, with have an infinite radius or some just it should be a straight bar with the gear teeth. So probably the most common application of rack and the path of Dina, it is in automotive steering over on it. Okay. So while you are defining a rack actuator, It is a device which is used to produce a linear actuation movement for a secondary mechanism using rack and pinion gear arrangement. Okay. And when you are saying about they will be converting rotational movement into the linear motion, so it will be a vice versa. So whereas the rack actuator is the device which is used to produce the linear actuation movement for the secondary mechanisms over there. Okay, the rack gear would be attached to a piston or some other mechanism which can able to provide a linear motion. So the movement of the rack would drive two partial pinion gears. So this would turn in, open and close the fingers over on it. The next one to be the cam actuated gripper. So whereas the cam actuated gripper, it is a, so actually the cam actuated gripper with a spring load follower. So they will be used to follow the uh, used to provide open and close actions of fingers. Okay, the spring will be incorporated for forcing the gripper to close if the cam is moved in one direction in the movement of cam on the other direction, which causes the gripper to open. So the cam mechanism which is used for finger movement by translation is generally actuated by a rotation actuators over on it. Okay, and this cam actuated grippers வந்து பார்த்தோம் அப்படின்னா it is reciprocating motion of the cam imparts motion to the follower which causing fingers to produce the cabin action. So that's சொல்லணும் உங்களுக்கு. So actually a common follower is it often using a spring load follower which can provide the opening and closing action. For example, movement of the cam வந்து ஒரு direction இருக்கு அப்படின்னா it will force the gripper to open. Movement of cam in opposite direction it will force the gripper to close. Okay. So this might be desirable in a machining operations where a single gripper is used to handle the raw work part and the finish part. So advantage வந்து பார்த்தோம் அப்படின்னா it would accommodate different size parts. So next one வந்து பார்த்தோம் அப்படின்னா screw type actuation method. So screw type actuations methodல வந்து actually the screw is turned by a motor. Okay, whereas usually it will accommodate by a the fingers to be the speed reduction method. Okay, the next one when the screw was rotated in a one direction sabina, it will causes a threaded block to be translated in one direction. They rotate in the opposite direction sabina, threaded block will be moved in the opposite direction. So threaded block வந்து என்ன ஆகும்னா it will connect it to the gripper fingers which will cause the corresponding opening and closing action. அதுதான் சொல்லுவாங்க. அதாவது lead screw actuators வந்து என்ன செய்வாங்கன்னா it has a compact form, okay, along with the rotating nut inside the cylinder. So on the motion வந்து which will be constrained within the cylinder, it is a nut that moves. Okay, so the electric screw actuators are self-locking and they will have a minimum number of moving parts around. Okay, so in the lead screw அப்படிங்கிறது பார்த்தோம் அப்படின்னா it is a kind of mechanical linear actuator which will able to convert rotation motion into a linear motion. Okay, so this process will be taken place over on it. Okay, next வந்து பார்த்தோம் அப்படின்னா rope and pulley mechanism. So rope and pulley mechanisms வந்து the pulley system வந்து will be might operate in one direction. Might operate in one direction, that is to open the gripper, and the tension device would take up the slack in the rope and they will be having a close the gripper and the pulley system operates in the opposite direction. So based on the thing, அதாவது single continuous rope வந்து will be transmit a tension force around one or more pulleys to lift or move a load. The rope may be a light line or a strong cable. So இது எப்படி work ஆகுது அப்படின்னு பார்த்தீங்க அப்படின்னா, so that is a pulley is a simple machine, okay, which consists of a rope and a grooved wheel. The rope வந்து என்ன பண்ணும்னா it fits into the groove in the wheel and the pulling on the rope which turns the wheel. Okay, usually the pulleys are generally used to lift objects, especially heavy objects. The objects lifted by a pulley which is to be named as an load. Okay, so usually we'll be attaching the rope first to the bottom of the pulley, then loop the rope down to the wheel on the mobile gear pulley. Okay, so now we have to loop the rope back up to the top stick pulley. So make sure that the rope is fully fitted into the grooves over on it. Okay, so this miscellaneous categories which is used to allow for gripper actuating mechanism which did not logically fall into one of the above categories. So example, we can go for expandable bladder or diaphragm, which would be inflated and deflated to actuate the gripper finger. So whereas the gripper with the rotary actuator வந்து பார்த்தோம் அப்படின்னா that is when the actuator is placed at the cross point of two fingers. So each finger is connected to the rotor and the housing of the actuator. So the actuator movement directly produces grasping and releasing action. Next, translation gripper mechanisms வந்து பார்த்தோம்னா so the finger mixin corresponds to the piston movement without any connective mechanisms between them. So drawback வந்து பார்த்தோம்னா to desired size of gripper because it cannot be grist thing. The pinion and sector gears வந்து connect to the element L1 and L2 respectively. So when the piston rod moves towards left அப்படின்னா the translation of the rack causes the two pinions to rotate clockwise and anti-clockwise respectively. So the release action occurs when the piston moves the right in the same way. Okay, so by that this topic is over. The remaining thing that we can see in the next class. Thank you all.